Welcome to the University of Southern California Leonard Davis School of Gerontology's GeroConnect webinar series. This next gen series today will be focused on mirrored career momentum for new environments and re-innovation. My name is Dr. Stephen Stump, and I'm an admission counselor here at the school. I'm also an alumni. I did my bachelor's, master's, and doctorate here. So I'm very excited to share with all of you the student life, opportunities, be able to answer any questions that you may have. And today I'm joined by two guest panelists. First, we have Sherry Snelling, who graduated from our MA in Gerontology program back in 2020 and completed her bachelor's also at USC. She's a corporate gerontologist, author, and founder of Caregiving Club, a leading organization focused on caregiver wellness, brain health, and healthy aging. She has been nationally recognized as a voice on caregiving, advising employers, healthcare organizations, and policymakers on how to better support family caregivers. She served in leadership roles with the National Alliance for Caregiving and has advised organizations including the White House, CDC, and Alzheimer's Association. Today, she continues to educate and inspire audiences around the world of caregiving, longevity, and wellness. And our second speaker is Daniel Hutcherson, who brings a unique perspective at the intersection of finance, aging, and protection of valuable populations. He's a financial gerontologist and wealth management leader whose work focuses on cognitive decline, financial vulnerability, and elder financial abuse. He serves on the Economic Security Advisory Council for American Society on Aging while currently working on his Doctor of Public Health at Johns Hopkins. His work is dedicated to helping individuals and families navigate the complex financial challenges that accompany aging and longevity. So please join me in welcoming our guest panelists. And before we hear from our panelists, I would like to give you some more introductory information about how our programs helped some of these mid-career professionals enter into their space. Our school was founded by Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus and Leonard Davis. Dr. Andrus was part of the founding board for National Retired Teachers Associations back as one of the first female leaders of a secondary school here in Los Angeles. They understood that there was a need for advocates and for older adults, especially were within the Teachers Association. Once they hit retirement, they needed those advocates to help them fight for rights, insurance, public policy. So, together with Leonard Davis, they founded the American Association of Retired Persons, or AARP for short, back in 1958. A couple of years later, due to Leonard Davis's generous gift to our school, USC, we then had the Ethel Percy Andrus Gerontology Center founded. And just a couple of years after that, we were the first in the country to offer master's and PhD programs in gerontology. That means that we have, for over 50 years, been able to provide education to leaders within the field of aging. Our programs are trying to give you that expertise to not only make a direct impact in the mental, social, psychological growth within this field, but also to make you the leader within the field. And why is being a leader in the field important? Well, in the next about 10 to 15 years, 1 in 5 Americans are going to be above the age of 65. That's a huge percentage of our population that are going to be requiring services, whether that's technology, advocacy work, public policy, insurance, or healthcare services. So, our history, our school, the faculty that are teaching within our classes are able to give you that leadership experience, that skill set to go out and make that difference. And thus, you're able to contribute to our impact within this field. So, while two of our faculty and alumni are dedicated to different areas, we have alumni that are going into a variety of different fields. They're going into starting their own businesses and becoming entrepreneurs. They're working with nonprofits, religious-based organizations. They're going into branding, consumer decision-making, and marketing. Others may be looking at transportation or urban planning. We even have some students that are going into the sciences, looking at mental health and medicine. So, our graduates can work at a variety of different types of institutions, whether that's continuing on with our founders' work in AARP, going into the banking sectors or the financial sectors, or others are staying in academia to create that next generation after you. So, I would like to introduce next Sherry Snelling, who will hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephen. And it's so great to be here with you and Danny today to talk about this and my pride in being a Trojan, a lifelong Trojan, I guess you could say. As Stephen said, I actually got my undergraduate degree in poli sci and also journalism back in 1985. And then I pursued a career in mostly marketing capacities and wound up kind of segueing from technology companies. I worked for Nintendo and Canon, and I made a big pivot into healthcare in about 2000 or so, where I went to work for United Healthcare. And I was there for a decade and then moved into some other healthcare organizations and long-term care organizations, and actually came back to USC and was working at Keck Medical Center. And through that experience, because for those of you who work at USC, you know that you have this wonderful opportunity to pursue future learning and get master's and PhD programs that can be subsidized or even free. And I took advantage of that when I was working at Keck. And in my 50s, early 50s, went back and got my master's in gerontology at the Leonard Davis School. And one of the things that was really encouraging to me because I wound up actually leaving Keck in between getting that master's. So I did have to actually dig into my own pocket to pay for the last about year or so, year and a half of my schooling. And one of the things I thought about is, okay, I've got at least half. I'm halfway there, but this is an investment in me. This is an investment in my career. I had been in healthcare and particularly in family caregiving and aging and working specifically in more of the neuroscience area with dementia and Alzheimer's and mental health and all those other issues that have to do with our brains. And I thought, but there is a component missing. I would love to, have more authority, if you will, in this. And so I said, okay, can I go ahead and, outlay the cash? I didn't want to get a student loan. So can I go ahead and pay for the last year or so, year and a half? And I know Dan's probably laughing because he's a financial gerontologist, so he knows these kind of decision-making things that go on. But um, could I do that? And could I see the return on investment? And I guess what I'd love to tell you is that not only did I see the return on investment, but it happened in less than a year of me finishing my master's. And I was able to really parlay now being a gerontologist out there with clients and getting speaking engagements. I wrote my second book right after getting my master's. And again, it gave me so much more authority because my research skills had really been honed. I understood so much more about what it really meant. And so, as you can see by my little avatars, I was playing around with AI. And yes, I put my photo into an AI creator. And that's what they came up with. So, okay, I'll take it. But, I do consulting for both large and small startups, particularly in the age tech space. And interestingly enough, because I became such an advocate for gerontology, right after I got my master's, I got a consulting role with a startup company, and we decided to name my position Chief Gerontology Officer. And I remember going into meetings with, CEOs and the C-suite with senior living and home care agencies, and a couple of people said, "That's a great title." So I feel like, the more we can get out there and push gerontology, the better. But I definitely grew my speaking opportunities, being able to have credibility and authority and building workshops. I do a lot of work with employers. So I'm doing a lot of workshops with training managers, training the C-suite, doing workshops around brain health and, stress awareness and balance with employees and then also serving as a spokesperson. There's a couple different companies where I have actually been the corporate gerontologist speaking on behalf of different companies and being able to go out there and do, events and media engagements and things like that. So I would say the decision to keep going and to be really worried about the money I was spending absolutely was the right choice for me in terms of my career because it kind of took off like a rocket. Whereas I had been in the space for a good maybe 15 years in family caregiving, but having that next level, I think, of credibility and authority and just that grounding that, we all know now about things like lifespan, health span, brain span. I think one of the things that's really interesting is that one of the things we all learned is that one of the components to living a longer life and achieving that longevity and quality of life is lifelong learning. And I feel like I'm a great example of that because I just have this passion, and this thirst to continue, being able to learn new things, sit in on different certificate programs or conferences or whatever. So the next slide. So as I said to you, I got really passionate about being able to be part of this community of gerontologists, and it was at a good time too. 2020, was unfortunately during the pandemic, but it was also when we were really starting to understand, I think, our own family life, work life, see the struggles and the challenges of the sandwich generation, people who were caring for older parents, see the longevity effect, in terms of all the things we were experiencing. And I think that was it was a real tipping point. So I really felt like I was kind of at a really good spot to be able to go out there and do some things that were giving back. So I've worked with other organizations and universities, always promoting USC, of course, as the #1 gerontology school in the nation. But I've been an advisor at Georgetown. I've done speaking engagements at Yale University and Emory University and others on longevity, and also family caregiving issues. And so, one of the things I did is I was an advisor and I took on an intern from Georgetown, and we decided that what we wanted to do is really promote the fact that what you said, Stephen, that gerontology is not simply about the long-term care community or even healthcare. It is really much, much larger than that. So we decided to interview 12 different people who were in different categories. Cynthia Hutchins, who I know Danny knows as well as a financial gerontologist, she was one of the interviews that we did. And we put those up on YouTube and promoted those just to showcase where, what gerontology was and how it could be integrated into really any industry, any organization that's out there. I've also continued to do some free content on my YouTube channel about gerontology. I do a podcast and a newscast, and we're constantly interviewing other experts and also taking a look at what is the latest news in certain areas. And then I'm working on my third book, which is actually about our built environments, so environmental wellness, and what critical role it plays in our longevity, in our health, and our healing. And it all based around kind of this new evolution that I've been seeing that I know many of you probably are very familiar with, but it's neurodesign. And so that seems to be the next frontier, if you will, for a lot of things that are happening. And it's an exciting time. I mean, L'Oreal, so the top beauty company, global beauty company, announced that they just hired a chief longevity officer. And we know Cynthia has been at Bank of America as the financial gerontologist leading programs there. So, whether it's Pottery Barn or Lowe's, because I think a lot about more of the retail consumer environment, all of these industries are looking for experts who understand not just, lifespan aging, but also, ageless design. How do we help market to an older population? All of these different kinds of things. So I think it's a very exciting time to come into gerontology and then really shape it how you want to use it because it's affecting pretty much every aspect of our lives. So with that, I will stop.
Thank you so much, Sherry. I really appreciate what you had to say about ageless design and especially the longevity effect and how that touches so many different industries, companies that a lot of people may not even realize that they're interacting with every day that has a gerontologist on staff. So that's very exciting. Next, I would like to invite Danny to talk. He's an alumni from our MA program, and I'll hand over the floor to you.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Sherry. It's great to be back among Trojan family and friends. I did my since yeah, I feel like Sherry, we're in the confession chamber here. So I did my bachelor's. Hi, I'm Danny. I did my bachelor's in finance in the mid '90s, and then served in the Marine Corps before going into the wealth management industry. And what brought me to the program was as much personal as it is professional. And I'll share with you who these really important people are in my life in just a moment. So at the time that I applied in 2016, I had helped care for three grandparents who lived with dementia. Two of them were financially exploited, which really hit home hard given my professional work, and one to the point that it impacted her care. So with that lived experience, I started noticing in my clients too that while everyone's dementia journey is different, an aging journey, the entry points to vulnerability, the entry points for those who took advantage of them, followed really similar patterns. There were positions of trust that were abused, access, and often power dynamics. So on this slide are my three dementia grandmothers, Hazel Fern, Norma, and Ruth, which dates both them and me with just their names. After I graduated, my Uncle Dale and my Uncle Tom were diagnosed. And before my father passed in 2020, he was diagnosed with mild cognitive impairment. So getting a master's in gerontology, gaining a deeper understanding of the biopsychosocial processes and factors in aging and the policies and social constructs that affect us as we age, was meaningful, on so many levels. Next slide, please. So I was a part-time student, an online student, although occasionally I attended for group projects and presentations, which yeah, I assume you're still welcome to do. And I did that as much as I could. And I did that while working far more than 40 hours a week. I had just founded a company 2 years before, and I completed the program over the course of 2 years and found that, taking a couple courses per term, doing some summer courses, was a nice pace. I love, Sherry, how you talked about the return on investment. I too started to see almost immediately how the texture of our conversations changed and really how I was being changed by the training. And especially after I spent an incredible in-person several-week summer course in Israel. We spent the first week in LA and then 2 weeks in Israel studying at what was then known as the IDC in Herzliya and now known as Reichman University. And Professor Mara Mather would be pleased to know that none of us thought it was an easy course. It covered how the way we experience emotion and cognition, the way we interact with the world around us, how that changes as we age, plus a very heavy dose of brain physiology. Our final exam was on the top of a building in Tel Aviv, and we had a diagram of the brain with like 50 different regions we needed to name. And Dr. Mather, I still remember the locus coeruleus and why it's important. So the coursework days were full. We did group work, presentations, midterm, and final, but the sights we saw were once in a lifetime. Next slide, please. So professionally, academically, and with respect to volunteer service, my MAG degree truly changed the direction of my career, bringing together decades of experience in finance and then some family lived experience as a caregiver with, as Sherry, really demonstrated are very timely insights into, the full life spectrum and particularly in later life and, the challenges that they and we need help navigating. So after USC, I applied to the University of Oxford, and thanks to the help of two professors, including Dr. Mather and Dr. Cicero, I was accepted to an MSc in translational health sciences, which focused on translating research into practice in healthcare, which then led to acceptance in the doctor of health program I'm in that Stephen mentioned at Johns Hopkins, and my upcoming work as a fellow at Harvard Medical School. But work-wise is where I saw the biggest return on that investment. So I almost immediately started speaking at industry conferences on the importance of adopting a life course approach to financial planning. Typically, when you think of investments and a lot of the advertisements you see on TV, it's focused on retiring or getting to retirement. But it's really all, that's that's an important milestone, but that's a singular event. And in our industry, we have this kind of period where the golden age of life is held up as this thing to aspire to. I would tell you that it's the life and the life transitions and the dignity that we carry through them, and that people like Sherry and I work to help them achieve and realize. That's what the real value of what I do is now, and all of that is because of my degree. So when the company I founded 2 years before I started the program was approached by a friendly competitor, Savant Wealth, we realized that they had a heavy focus on health and well-being for now 25,000 families, and because of my gerontology expertise, it was an immediate fit for us and for them. Service-wise, as Stephen mentioned, I serve on the Economic Security Advisory Council at the American Society on Aging. Thanks again to the support of two esteemed faculty members of the Leonard Davis School, including the Associate Dean, Maria. And I'm also on the board of governors of the oldest nonprofit in Illinois, Chicago Scots and Caledonia Senior Living and Memory Care, where I'm helping lead our transformation into a dementia care center of excellence. So, it truly has touched every part of my life. And just on the next slide, the opportunities that I've had to consult around the world, to talk with companies like IKEA. It's so funny. We've probably talked to some of the same people, Sherry. The appetite for professionals with training in gerontology and the life course approach is only going to increase. And USC, as we heard at the beginning of the call from Stephen, was and is the largest and best, I can tell you, place to gain that training. So with that, Stephen, thank you so much for having me. It's great to be among peers, and we'll look forward to questions.
Thank you, Danny. I really appreciate your insight into what really drove you to apply to this program and enter this field. And I think one thing that you mentioned, and Sherry mentioned too, is how faculty helped you get to the next spot in your career. And not just as faculty, but some of your classmates, some of your connections that you've made through the USC network. I think that's one thing that really also contributes to making our program standing out, is that our alumni network is very active, very strong, and located all over the world. We have more than 3,000 just gerontology alumni to join the 500,000 plus alumni of USC. One of my favorite alumni moments is being in the Hong Kong airport, and I'm wearing my same polo that I am today with my USC logo on it, and someone's yelling from across the airport, "Fight on." And they hold up the little V for victory, our symbol. And I think that's so powerful, because if someone's willing to go out of their way across the world just to say hello, imagine what they're going to do if you need a business contract, a deal, a job, advice. And so I think to have that even gerontology perspective added onto it just makes it that much more meaningful and impactful. And so we invite all of you to ask your questions in the Q&A, to reach out to both Sherry and Danny or any other admission counselor personnel from our school. We're here to answer your questions. We're here to show you all the resources that our school can offer you, not just the rigorous academic courses that we have. We have volunteer work, student organizations. We can get you involved in volunteering or companies located here in the Los Angeles metropolitan area. So there's a lot for you to join as part of our community outside of just the classes itself. So if you do have any questions for Sherry or Danny, please feel free to put them in the Q&A option. And if you have any questions for an admission counselor, such as which program's the best fit for you, how to get involved with the school, or how to start the application process, please feel free to reach out to either Jasmine or myself. You can do so via email for a one-on-one meeting, or you can scan our QR code to submit an inquiry on our website. But as you guys put some questions into our Q&A, I would like to start by asking you all one. And that question is, for me, when I applied to my doctorate, the scariest thing was just starting the application. So what were some of your hesitations before you started the application? Sherry, we'll start with you.
Some of my hesitations. I just, again, I wanted to make sure financially that I could see it through because I wasn't sure if I was going to stay in my position at CAC where I had that kind of nice subsidy for getting my master's. I also wanted to, like Danny, I was working full time at CAC, and I also had my caregiving club, projects that I was doing on the side. So working so many hours, and I felt like, okay, can I really give it my all? And can I get the most out of this? I will say this, I was a much better student getting my master's than I was as an undergrad. There was no Thursday night distractions or, any other things going on. So I felt like I was very dedicated to doing that. But it was a concern at first. Did I really have the time to be doing this? And then, in some ways, I think what really helped me in getting my master's is seeing that this longevity journey that hopefully most of us are on, that will our health spans and brain spans will equal our lifespans, but to not sell yourself short, even if you're in your 40s or 50s or 60s. I have a mentor who has helped me with the writing of my books, and she worked at ARP. She was actually the head of all their editorial content for the last 12 years. She just recently retired, but she retired to start her Substack column and go back and get her own master's at 87. So we never stop learning and we never stop engaging. And I think that's really the true thing that you should look at. You don't let your age discourage you in any way.
Thank you for
You know,
that. And Danny?
yeah, for sure. I think Sherry, I had some of the same hesitations. I wasn't sure if I would know how to learn, if I would remember like how to learn in a classroom setting. And especially, and it sounds like Sherry and I had we were in somewhat of a similar stage. Like, I had some leadership experience. I had some speaking experience. So, it was a little bit intimidating to then not be in the front of the room, to be in, among peers and, wondering whether I would feel like I was part of the class, which I very much did. I mean, there's so much opportunity to engage. Certainly, there are plenty of tests of your knowledge, but also, group work where you get to feel like you're part of, a larger cohort, and you make friends. I've got a half a dozen friends who I was with, from 2016 to 2018. We talk, see each other. We've scheduled flights to be able to have coffee, around the same time before. It is nice to, again, to be among the USC family, and it truly is. When I was in Israel, we wore, of course, very proudly, our USC gear, and we had people stopping us everywhere. We stopped over in Europe on the way back, and same thing, no matter where we were. We were in the middle of Paris, and somebody had, a USC T-shirt on, and we had "Fight On" screamed across one of the, the plazas. So, that was fun. Yeah, I think the other, from a pragmatic standpoint, I wasn't sure who would be a reference. Like, who's a reference when maybe you're the person in charge, or or you lead a team, like who's going to be a referee for you? And so I had one of my clients, who I had helped navigate, an issue with a parent that was very similar to my experience as a family caregiver. It can be informal experience. That's okay. It's really more about, speaking to who you are, and, a reference for your potential. You don't have to have, published. I think you just have to demonstrate, a real interest, in gerontology, and show how it could make a difference in your life. And believe me, the program, welcomes and promotes, as I am living proof of, being the finance guy in the room. I was welcomed with open arms.
Thank you for sharing how all of those hesitations were quickly calmed once in the program. And I know it can also be intimidating thinking about having to continue to work either part-time or full-time, continue to be a professional, and also manage the academic component of it. Could both of you talk about how you were able to balance that? Danny, how about we start with you?
Sure. Well, I have a secret weapon. That is that I am on Eastern time zone. And so for me, I got to have my work day, and many of the classes, especially for the master's program, are scheduled later in the day, or you can schedule classes that are offered later in the day. So for what was 2 o'clock or, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, USC time, um, that was at the end of my workday. So for all of you who are east of the Mississippi, there is a real advantage to taking your courses, in this program. It just makes the work-life balance that much easier.
Thank you.
Yeah,
And
and I
Sherry?
think I think for me, I really I enjoyed the online component because again, I wasn't always able to be there in person, obviously, for classes. One of the things that I was really grateful for is that I had a couple different bosses at Keck Medicine at USC. I was working for Dr. Leslie Saxon, who heads up the Center for Body Computing, and I was also working, for Maine USC. And everybody was very supportive of what I was doing. So it's like, okay, the class is at 3 o'clock on a Thursday. Even though I couldn't get over to campus, I could watch it online and then I could stay a little bit later to get my work done. So they were very flexible in that way, and I was really grateful for that. And then I always tried to get to class in person when I could, particularly if we were doing kind of more of the presentations, just because I wanted to hone my skills, as Danny was saying. I just wanted to continue to do that and also interact with the other students. I think one of the things being an older student that I had to learn was Blackboard, which was completely new to me, but I loved it because the discussions that we had, on that forum and stuff were just really lively and engaging, and I really enjoyed that piece.
Thank you. And for those of you that don't know what Blackboard is, it's our online learning management system. So that's where you'll be able to upload assignments, have your discussion and bulletin boards, review any materials that the professor's dropping into your course page as well. Both of you mentioned that you had this kind of flexibility, either watching the classes online. Sherry, you mentioned being able to go in person. Could you tell if you were missing anything from being just an online student, or was it much more meaningful to be in person? What was your both of your experiences with that? Sherry, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I was actually really a little bit surprised, I guess, when I started. I was telling Danny before we went live here that there were actually a handful of other students that were right around my age, and also were in different parts of the country. So we were all kind of these online students, and so that was really interesting. And I didn't feel that I lost anything. I think because there was the encouragement of always including the online students, particularly if you were watching live, you could call in with a question, and that was always kind of fun. You're like the voice from above or whatever calling in. But I do feel that it was nice to have both sides where I could go in person and then finally meet the people I'd been talking and chatting with on Blackboard or in discussion forums, but also the flexibility of not having to miss out if, I couldn't make it or whatever. So I didn't feel in any way that there was a deficit, if you will, in my learning or my interaction with the other students by being, more of an online student.
Yeah, and for me too, similar experience. I feel like there might have been times I'm a bit vocal, so like yeah, I think once they understood that like I was happy to respond, that I got called on when I attended live, maybe a little bit more than sometimes people in class. I absolutely felt no difference in terms of how I was treated versus, my peers. And really, I think by the end, Dr. Mather was probably the one who really pushed this. Like we actually were all colleagues, like truly, also with the professors. I mean, they were, very supportive, not just of what we were doing in the classroom, but also, Sherry said what we were doing in our professional lives. It was great to, be able to attend office hours, which, many of the instructors make time specifically for, anyone to dial in. It's a set time. And many of the courses also have terrific TAs who are either more senior MA, MS students or doctoral students. They're terrific, and so they can kind of give you a lay of the land, help you prepare for an exam in terms of question something that maybe you didn't catch in your notes. And as well, again, the group work I think was the real glue for us. That by the time I graduated, when we graduated, we were all cheering for each other because we knew. Yeah, so graduation, I certainly attended in person, but we all knew each other. So yeah, it really felt like a family.
Yeah, and I want to just reiterate too, and Danny, thank you for calling out the TAs. They were fantastic, but I give real kudos to the professors because as more of an online student, I never felt like I was invisible or that they forgot about me or whatever. They were always very mindful of having those folks that joined online. And also my last semester was during COVID, so we were all online. We had all online classes that last semester.
Thank you for sharing both of those experiences. It sounds like you had great peers in your classes that were also coming from similar backgrounds as well. Would you say that you learned just as much from your peers as you did the instructor themselves?
If I could jump in on this one. So, and my wife, was born in China and is there right now, actually. And, the number of students we had from Asia, specifically China, who, at that time were, they were and are experiencing a shortage of caregivers, family caregivers, healthcare workers because of the one child rule. And, hearing their experiences and seeing, the urgency for them, they really, yeah, I think for us, they added for my crew, they added, this great dynamic because this wasn't just something that they were looking to do individually. They felt like that they were and are part of something much bigger and that they were helping to solve, a societal level problem. And we're seeing that here too. I mean, that's why Sherry is, she's had so many of these incredible opportunities beyond her talent and training. This is, yeah, I think, the future of healthcare, being able to address this population, which in many ways is marginalized, whether it's ageism or, the focus in my industry on getting to retirement. It's everything after. There's a lot of life that we can live very well, after that. And, finding your niche, whether it's coming in from nursing. There's a question, that I'll answer live here about, so I didn't have any nursing training, to come in, uh, to where a nursing master's would have really come into focus. Whether you are a nurse, or another medical professional, certainly having a gerontology degree, can add to that. Again, you're looking at not just the biological side. So medicine is the practice of healthcare at the individual level. What we focused on was not only the biological side, but the psychological side and the social factors of aging. So you get a much broader lifespan approach to the process of aging and all the factors that go into that. I would say it'd be a great complement for your practice.
Yeah, and I'll just chime in too on some of the stuff from the chat, but I'll also answer the question about the peers. I think definitely because um, so many of the other students, and particularly the online students, I will have to say, were in different professions and we're in different industries still working. So we weren't all just full-time students. I think there was a really interesting dynamic. We were learning from the full-time students, but we were also learning from the people who were out there working and wanting to apply
Mhm.
gerontology to their current work or make a pivot in their career, whatever. But I think that interaction with the other students was extremely valuable. And as Danny said, we've all kept our relationships. I mean, there are several people I'm still working with who are in my classes that are out there in different organizations. To the person who asked about the masters in nursing, and masters in geriatrics, I think from my perspective, my background was mostly in more marketing type capacities, communication, and so I wasn't on the clinical side of this. I always knew that I wanted to take my master's and really blend it with the other skill set that I have so that I added more authority and expertise, being able to guide other organizations in how should they be thinking about their customers, how should they be designing their products, how should they be thinking about customer service, because we knew we were going to have this growing population of older adults, that we needed to take care of, and also to recognize the challenges, like Danny was saying, with his family. And I went through personal family caregiving as well, the family caregivers. And then there was another question I thought was interesting about, oh, were you always able to get adequate academic resources remotely? Yes. I think that's one of the great things about, again, the USC curriculum, because we even had the librarian from the USC library come in and walk us through, APA, how to properly, do your research and all of that. And there were just so many really great resources above and beyond the classes and what we were learning that I think came to bear, that I'm not sure you get with other schools. I just know that USC is really, obviously top level in making sure that their students are very well equipped before they send us out there.
The program, I would agree, the program that I did afterward, was quite writing intensive and qualitatively based, from a research standpoint, and even just being able to, to know when to use APA versus AMA or Toronto and why, and knowing your audience. We had a lot of training from the library specialists in several courses because, of course, the bar is high. I mean, this is USC, so it is a high bar, but to have that additional training had, carried huge benefits professionally and also in future academic programs. It was exceptional training.
On the topic of academic resources, could you talk about how to access your academic advisors or open office hours, or if you had a question, how would you go about finding out the answer? Sherry would.
You who's going first? Yeah, I mean, I think that the accessibility to everybody from professors to the TAs to other students was really terrific, because you could always connect with people, whether it was online or have a phone call or a Zoom call or whatever it was. So I think that all of that was really well, coordinated and thought about. I never felt like, wow, I don't know where to turn, or I don't know who to talk to, or there isn't really a pathway for me to find out about this or do this, or just because I'm not there personally, I didn't feel like I was missing anything, really, to be
Mhm.
honest.
Yeah, again, I agree because, the TAs, I think, were a really valuable resource. They helped provide that bridge from the classroom. And in many cases, they were the ones providing the instruction and often grading. You want to talk to your TA. You want to understand, if the rubric wasn't explicitly put out there, they want to help you. They want you to succeed. And in many cases, they sat in the classroom a few years before taking exactly this course. That's the reason they're in it as a TA, in most cases. And the same for the professors. We are their legacy, right? So they want you to have as much preparation and training, as possible. So I being the resources that we had online, um, the one thing that I would say is connect with your peers, connect with your TAs, make sure that your instructors, know who you are. And if you have a question, there is no question too simple. Ask it, because that, everyone wants you to be successful. This is not a competitive environment where anyone is worried about beating the person next to them. This is a group of colleagues all trying to, make life better for older adults.
Yeah, that's well said, Danny, because I felt the same way. It wasn't really competitive, it was very collaborative.
Mhm.
And everybody was very invested in kind of lifting each other up or helping to answer questions or whatever. So I think that was really wonderful to have.
Yeah. And I should say before someone corrects me, and I'm sure I'll get an email if I don't put this in there, the life course, the lifespan is not just, gerontology is not just about later life, but it truly covers, from, even preconception factors, that have health effects, and then, impacts of early life events on health in later life. So truly the full spectrum there. Just wanted to get that in before I got an email from one of our former classmates or professors.
I think it's great to hear that too, that we really have a very holistic approach of the field of gerontology and the study within the classrooms. So even though you may have a class that's focused on the psychology of aging, they're bringing in biological, sociological, public policy principles to give you more widespread knowledge around it. That way, the class is geared towards anyone, whether it's going into psychology, public education, consulting work, starting your own business. You can take the assignments and really focus in on what you want to study with each of the assignments. So
Yeah.
let's,
And can I just say one other quick little thing? Because having been in the world of family caregiving for very big organizations, United Healthcare, huge, insurance company, and certainly CAC as an academic medical center, it wasn't until I got into the Gero school and learned about biopsychosocial model. And that really became the premise for my second book, which is about balance in life that we're all seeking, right? So I really have to I have to say that even though I felt like I knew everything, I certainly learned so much more that I didn't know, and I think that's the value of going back and getting your master's.
amazing. So let's transition a little bit to going through the admission process into the program. Can you both explain how you picked USC and why you chose to apply to USC? We'll start
Well,
with,
I can
yeah.
answer that just really quickly. I've talked a little bit about I started when I was an employee at USC, and certainly it was just a really easy pathway because I could get some of my schooling underwritten by being an employee. But even though the last year or year and a half I spent out of my own pocket, it was so worth it because USC, and I'm a diehard Trojan being an undergrad. But it is the number one gerontology school, and I kind of like to be with the group that's really leading the way, right? And so it was a source of pride, I think, to if I was going to do this, I was going to do it with absolutely the best. So for me, there was no other school that I even looked at or even thought about. It was like I'm a USC Trojan, and thank goodness they're number one in gerontology because that's where I want to go.
Very similar, and I'll address Michael's question in the chat as well about financial support. I didn't have financial support other than, through my company, and I joined the Marine Corps for the same reason that Sherry and I both, chose USC and specifically the Leonard Davis School because I wanted to be part of the best. I mean, I did do research. I certainly evaluated other options, but again, because of the feedback, even then, more than 10 years ago, that, that there was this high level of engagement for online students, as well as the ability to come in person. So that was the other thing. I wanted the flexibility to attend if I could, to fly out and, and attend and, and also to study abroad. And when I talked with a few peers, I think really what sealed it, I talked with a few of my peers. As soon as I said USC, I said, well, of course you're going to USC, right? And so that, even without the peer pressure, I would have made that choice because I too wanted to be at the first and best program, in gerontology. But it certainly helped to have that recognition of, the school and the program's reputation already there, as a validation.
I think that's one thing that our programs encapsulate is that you're not just getting the knowledge within these classes. The faculty are producing this knowledge in their labs. So they're coming up with this groundbreaking research and instilling it into their classes, and then you having access to it. So that's also contributing to making you a leader. And you have all of these other resources that Sherry and Danny have been talking about behind you too, such as those networks, those connections, those the assistance or the help that you have. And that extends well beyond past your time at USC all the way into when you're an alumni. And we do have a merit-based scholarship that our students can apply for directly on our applications to all of our master's and graduate certificate programs. So that does help with funding. And if you're considering any other additional funding opportunities that may be available to you, I encourage you to reach out to an admission counselor as they have documents, lists, and resources to help you find the funding to make the program financially feasible for you. While we are approaching the end of our dedicated time today, I do have one more question for each of you. And that is, if you could give a prospective student one piece of advice before applying to our program, what would it be? And we'll go ahead and start with Sherry.
Ooh. Um, I think I what I would say is, um, really engage. And I think, as I said, I was a much better student when I was older because I think it was so much more important to me. I was very focused on my education, but just by being engaged, and by that I mean just absorb it all, not just the classes and the learning, but the professors, the TAs, the other students, the environment, and also just being part of this community at USC because as Stephen and Danny have said, you know, it doesn't stop once you graduate. The community is there to support each other. And I think that is one of the values of going to USC that other schools, because I meet people who have been to some of the other schools that have, aging or gerontology type courses. They don't have the same kind of alumni connections that we do. And I think that's invaluable when you're going out there and working in any kind of industry or environment. So I would just say as engaged as you possibly can and enjoy.
And I would add to that, go to Google or whatever search tool you use and type in USC and aging, USC and longevity. Pull up the work of the incredible faculty, even the dean. So we'll just put aside all the faculty for a minute. Pull up the dean of any other gerontology program, and I dare you to put him next to Dean Cohen and the incredible work that he is, the research that he is still involved in, and the representation across the aging community globally, the conferences that he is representing all of us in gerontology in these critical issues. You will not find a more engaged leadership and faculty. So pull up aging research and just see where they're from, or specifically pull up a few of the faculty members and see what they're researching. And I think that will just increase your enthusiasm to be part of the program. Because for me, that's something that I didn't do on the front end. I didn't know to do, and now having been at these other institutions, who do I see at the conferences? Well, I saw Stephen last year at On Aging. I saw our associate dean. I saw Dr. Benton. I see USC people at every aging conference. And Sherry, I hope to see you at one of the next ones too.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for those wise words. I'm sure our prospective students can take them to heart. And to kind of just echo what Danny said, Dean Cohen was named in the top 1% of all scientists in all fields in the entire world. So truly groundbreaking research that not only are you learning about, but can potentially become a part of. Um, Sherry, Danny, thank you so much for your time today, for all of your insight, your experiences, and sharing what USC Gerontology really meant to you. I appreciated it very much, getting to know you both better and to hear you speak so highly of our programs and your experiences. So I hope to get to see you all at the next conference, and if not, fight on.